Hoping Loki doesn't start barking at some point.
My dog might too. It's all good. One more second. I'm getting this to go share over. All right, all right. So I have Heather joining me today, and we are now live streaming to the Freedom from Alcohol group. So I want to take a moment to celebrate Heather, let you guys meet her and hear her wonderful story. So, oh, sorry, now I'm slurring because I have a cough drop. So, Heather, good morning. It's so good to see you because I haven't seen you in a couple weeks.
Good morning.
How was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. Yeah, it was great. Got to see some family and yeah, it was very enjoyable. So feeling
Well,
very grateful.
good, yes. So how was it different for you this year?
The holiday?
Yes.
Well, I felt a lot better mentally and physically in my body. And I was just more present. I was more present with my family. I always enjoy my family time, and because everyone's pretty spread out, so when we are able to get together, it's great. For me, I didn't feel almost like that nervous energy, like, oh, when's a bottle of wine going to be popped open, or getting a drink, and kind of staying in that loop. All of that was gone, and so it wasn't like there was no focus on anything other than just being present and enjoying the connecting time.
Oh my God. I ask because I'm sure people are curious, once you quit this thing and you do this hard thing and you get rid of the alcohol, like does the alcohol or do the holidays suck? And the answer for me has always been no. And coming from a place, and I do want you to share your story. We started with holiday before the people even know like what your story is. That's okay. Because people get really stressed, and here we come into the Christmas season, same thing. People really stress, like, when should you quit drinking? Yesterday, last year. But if you can't do it then, how about tomorrow, right? But Christmas is coming. How can I do that? Yeah. So it wasn't sucky. It was pretty good. You were present. You actually enjoyed it more. The anticipation of a holiday being sucky because no alcohol was, I imagine, way worse than the actual. And it's really not that big of a deal, right?
Right.
Yeah. So now that we dove deep in, go ahead and share your story with us. Tell us like where you were, where you are now. Just give us the goods.
Well, yeah. So when I think about, it's been almost 4 months that I've been alcohol free, and it's funny because it feels a lot longer than that to me. So when I say it, there's almost a part of me that feels slightly, there's almost like a discouragement when I think about, I'm like, oh, it's only been, 4 months, but I feel like I've changed so much, or like my mindset and just my mental clarity around alcohol has evolved so much in 4 months. It seems like it's been a lot longer. So the first month was probably the toughest, and then it's just gained momentum, and it's kind of like a big snowball. So when I found Chris initially, I heard him on a podcast. He was interviewed on the Single on Purpose podcast.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And so I heard him on this podcast. It was totally random. And I thought, oh, interesting, a sober coach, or, someone that kind of helps people with their relationship with alcohol. And I thought, how cool. That's really cool. I mean, I don't need that, but like, that's really cool.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just kind of impressed by his clarity around all of it. And I was very impressed with the conversation. So fast forward, I think it was several months, and I was just kind of in a place where, I'm not I was not an everyday drinker. It was very much like that middle of the road, very social, high functioning drinker. Loved my good wine, had my wine clubs, loved good cocktails. But it's also very physical, active, running my own business for several years. And so I have to really be on and very high functioning. But I've also had a very unhealthy relationship with alcohol for a long time. And I wasn't acknowledging how unhealthy it was.
Wow.
And that was because of all the social acceptance.
Yes.
That's around alcohol. I mean, it's everywhere.
I feel like a bobblehead. I'm just,
Yeah.
So I'll just continue with my bobbling and you keep going.
Yeah. So for me, and I grew up in a home where there wasn't any drinking. I grew up in a very religious household. I, started drinking in high school a little bit, and smoking weed, and then I didn't really kind of have a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol until I was in my early 20s.
Okay.
And now I'm 43, so I'm almost 44.
So young.
Yeah, so I've been drinking a long time. And it has been a social lubricant.
Mm-hmm.
It has been a relationship lubricant. It has been, a way for me to let loose, let my guard down, have so much fun, with that dopamine hit. I've had a blast in many ways over the years, drinking and partying and staying up late and all that kind of stuff. And so it wasn't until I got married when I was 20, or sorry, I didn't get married when I was 26, but I entered into a very long-term relationship with my ex, who I eventually married when I was 26, and we were together for almost 15 years. And our relationship was incredibly tumultuous. There was a lot of love, a lot of, work hard, play hard. And we bought, property eventually, and would have huge bonfires and get-togethers and host big social events. And it was so much fun until it became, kind of on and off, up and down. It wasn't fun. It was a sloppy disaster.
Yeah.
And
bunch
I
of
was
people running around a fire acting like idiots, right?
Yeah, and my husband, my partner, was the ringleader.
Mm-hmm.
And as I was getting older, and I would kind of battle with this Jekyll and Hyde type lifestyle, because I wanted to feel really good. I was very active, and then I would also have this party side where they just didn't align. And I found myself taking care of my ex many nights when he was sick, just hammered drunk and couldn't get in the bed, or was locked himself in the bathroom. And there was just a lot of really, really awful behavior that got worse and worse and worse. And so for me, a lot of the drinking patterns became really unattractive and really, really unhealthy. And eventually they led to the ruin of our marriage. And that breaks my heart, because there was a lot of love and there was a lot of goodness. And it wasn't until I left that my ex finally acknowledged that he had a serious drinking issue and couldn't moderate it, couldn't handle it, couldn't manage it on his own. And by then it was too late for us. Too much damage had been done. So that's one chunk of my alcohol story. But it was a big part of my life for a long time, and it became incredibly unhealthy. So fast forward, I left that relationship when I was 40 because I was like, I will not turn 40 and still be in this loop.
That's very brave.
And
Just
yeah,
FYI, very brave.
yeah. And it was, one of the hardest things I've ever done. And so when I left, I was drinking red wine every night, taking it to bed. I left my home, my beautiful property, the safety of my relationship. And I was sort of now in this newfound space of recreating my life. What does that look like? And I got to a place where I started to really get healthier on my own. And I stopped drinking and was eating really well. And I was kind of healing where I moved here in the mountains. I was hiking a lot, getting out, making new connections. And it was wonderful. I was feeling really, really good. And eventually I found myself dating again. And what do you know? Boom. I led with margaritas.
This is a big one for people who are dating. This, you're going to be speaking to a lot of people who are dating, because that social lubricant, like, let's just chat for a second on what that does. And I don't want to interrupt your story, but
Oh,
like,
sure.
if I'm going on a first date, and I did this when I was younger, if I'm going on a first date with somebody, I might even have a drink before I show up, just so I
Yeah,
can be loose. And then by the
totally.
time we've been talking for an hour, I'm kind of lit. Like, I've had 2 drinks now at the restaurant, let's say. So now we're like at 3 or 4 drinks, because maybe I had one at home, maybe I had two, right? And now he's not getting the real me, and I'm not able to judge the real him. And what does that lead to? All sorts of disasters. It leads to having sex before you even knew the person, because hey, it's a social lubricant, but it also puts you in the bed.
Hmm.
And you don't even
Hmm.
know this person because you were inebriated, and maybe they were too. So you're judging this person and like, hey, I like this dude, but you're drunk, so your brain's not working. He's drunk, so it's not even him or her, so let's keep it like, gender free, because we could be talking to men about women and men about men. It doesn't matter. But we're not
Right.
even true versions of ourselves or the other person. And that can take us down some back alleyways, right? So I'm sure that's like people are over here doing the bobblehead with me and you on this. So there's so many parts of your story that I feel like are going to be resonating with people. So I just want to thank you again for coming on here and sharing. So keep going, but I just wanted to take that pause because there's people over there like, oh my God, I am Heather. She is me. Let's go. Yep.
Yeah, so I mean, you nailed it with everything that you just said, in terms of what my experiences have been, for 20 years
Mm-hmm.
in dating, literally. Like if I look back even before I met my ex, who I was with for almost 15 years, my prior dating relationships, I was young, partying, having a good time, going to college. It's so common, but you end up falling into bed or whatever it is, into relationship with people very quickly. And then that usually ends in a lot of upset and hurt and disaster in some form. And that's been my pattern, and I've had some great connections, but I've also had some disasters, that could have been avoided. So fast forward, here I am, 40, divorced, restarting my life, and I started dating again, which was really intimidating at 40. And one of my first really strong connections, like I said, I led with margaritas and ended up, with a very quickly, sleeping together and feeling super bonded and kind of moving down this path. And I'm someone that kind of gets connected very quickly in that instance. And so um, it led me into a wonderful relationship with an incredible guy. But it ended up being a loop again of a
The
version of
same thing.
myself that is not necessarily authentic to who I am and how I want to show up. And I found myself falling back into these old patterns of behavior, which were getting excited having some drinks. Like you said, sometimes drinks before he would even come over, so I would relax and loosen up more, right? You know, being a really fun drunk. I mean, having a blast, staying up late, good conversations, and just, this kind of like elevated version of myself. Now, after some time and some of the initial honeymoon phases wear off, with that come outbursts, upsets, triggers, right? Combine that with alcohol, everything's elevated. Everything's sort of it's just like bigger, right? More intense. And I found myself being incredibly sort of up and down, and almost like not volatile, but I would have these outbursts. And then I would wake up in the morning and think, oh God, like, why did I say that? Or, why was I so upset about that? Or, oh, I look like an idiot. Or, I would just be regretting this version of myself that wasn't authentic to who I really am and how I want to show up. Especially now that I'm in my 40s, it's like, ugh, I'm so over sort of that, like the
partying, the being drunk, the being hungover. Ugh.
Right. And being that version of myself that really is not authentic to who I am. And so, anyway, I ended up, over the last few years, I would take breaks from drinking. And the person that I was dating was very supportive of that. And he would do the same. But, it'd be like 30 days, as everyone knows. And then it's like, okay, I feel so good. Great. Now we can have a drink again and, ease back in. And then it would always turn back into, oh, a glass of wine at night to wind down. And it's like you're back on the train, because of all the chemical stuff that's going on. And then it's the next night. Oh, there's always a reason. There's always a reason to drink. And so anyway, I just found myself in this loop and getting pulled back into these old patterns. And so earlier this year, I remembered this podcast that I had listened to, Chris. And I thought, well, maybe I'll just reach out and see if I could have a couple coaching sessions with him. And I didn't know anything about him other than what I had heard on this podcast. So I reached out. And I'm not on TikTok.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Actually, don't do it. Don't do it. It'll ruin your life. You'll be so addicted. Don't do it.
Yeah. So I reached out to him, and then I looked him up on Instagram, and I started looking at some of his content. And he and I connected for a call, and I was really excited to chat with him. He's got a great voice.
He does. He's got that radio voice.
He's got that radio voice. So anyway, when I talked to him, I was thinking, well, I don't need a program. Like, I don't need a whole meal deal. I'm not, someone that drinks every day. Like, I don't consider myself an alcoholic, whatever that means. And so I went into my conversation with Chris not intending to join this program at all. I mean, I didn't know anything about it. And so after I talked with him, I got off the phone and I started thinking about, everything we had discussed and just my relationship with alcohol and where I was at in my life. And I thought, I need something that's going to kind of tip me over, like this
right on the
balancing act I'm doing, like this dance that I'm doing with alcohol. And I need something that is going to kind of get me through this like transitional phase to where this becomes something that's like more of a lifestyle and not just a, this up and down toxic cycle. And so I had some really interesting revelations pretty quickly after I talked to Chris, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to figure out a way to do this program, because one thing that I knew that I wanted and needed was like a community. Other people that were struggling
Yes.
with similar things, because I knew that there were other people that were struggling, but I wasn't connected to any of them. And so I thought, well, if I join Chris's program, I will get those resources and, connection, weekly support, whatever it is, to be able to just talk about this stuff. And that's what I felt like I really needed. So I pulled the trigger, and for me, it was a really big deal, because I'd never done anything like this for myself. And it felt very, but it felt like a really good decision. And I remember I called my dad and I told him what I was doing. And my dad is we're similar with our compulsions. And I started crying, like my whole body. I started, like, I could barely tell him what I was doing, which was really interesting to me, that I had such like this emotional breakdown trying to tell him that I needed help and that I was going to join this program. And he was super supportive and thought it was wonderful. And so anyway, so I joined. And then I dug in, and I did all the work. I did all the whys and the questions and the processing, and I, read the books, and I listened to the audiobooks, and I, really kind of did a lot of self-reflection, and it was really, really freeing for me at first. It was also really difficult to hold up that mirror and really like own my own decisions and relationship with alcohol over the years, and start that process of forgiving myself. Like, that's been really hard for me. I have struggled with that a lot, feeling like I've wasted a lot of time, finding myself in my 40s now and thinking, geez, why did I waste so much time being this version of myself? And so I've spent a lot of time. This program essentially became like a catalyst for me. So I've always been big on like self-development and growth, but this program has really, it's like accelerated my growth as a person.
It's like a launcher. Like a launcher.
Yeah. It's been like a launcher, yeah. And it has turned into all of these, it's kind of moved me in these different areas of growth and development. So while it's been about getting alcohol free and getting clarity around my relationship and mindset around alcohol, it has turned into so much more than alcohol. Right. And so,
in our sessions, I'm going to interrupt you one more time.
Yeah.
Probably not the last time, honestly. I'm not the best interviewer, but I try. So one of the things that people think is like, okay, if I'm going to be coached on, how to have this sober life, or whatever you want to call it, alcohol-free, non-drinker, badass, whatever it is, they think they're going to get on a Zoom call with me or Chris or Matt, the three coaches, and we're going to talk about alcohol all day. And that's not the truth. So it is about, like, step one, let's get the alcohol out of your life. Step two, let's figure out why you were drinking and like get some tools in your tool bag. And then step three, let's go build a life, because we don't want just an empty hole where all that drinking was taking up space and now there's nothingness, because boredom leads to other addictions.
Right.
Whether it's going to be shopping, sex, porn, gambling, I don't know, any of it, food. But so we want to fill that. So we can't just take the 5 hours every day that I was drinking from 5 to 10 or whatever it was and not do anything there. So we've got to fill it with something else. So our coaching is not just put down the drink. There's nothing to talk about there. it's more about how can we learn to cope with our lives? How can we get some coping mechanisms that work well? Let's work with your subconscious and get your beliefs lined up. And then let's work on building that next life. So I'm excited to hear like the differences for you. Actually, I segued this, so this is good. Into that new life of yours. Like what's going on now, and keep telling your story. Yeah.
Yeah, so what you just said, it reminds me of one thing that I did want to mention, which is that alcohol, what I've realized is that I struggle with a lot of compulsions. I think a lot of us do. And like you just said, this has been more than just an awareness of how alcohol is so toxic in our lives, but also just my own coping mechanisms and compulsions that I've had my whole life. And so what it's done is it's given me that awareness, an ability to have the awareness, which I think is the first step.
Yes.
And then from there, you can kind of catch yourself. You can have your list of, all these other things you can do when an urge comes up, or ways that we can care for ourselves, or get curious about, why am I feeling that way, like, or why do I want to have a drink right now, like what's missing, like why do I want to go to the casino, why do I want to have sex?
Right.
Why do I want, whatever it is.
Why is my Amazon credit card at $20,000? Yeah.
Right. Why am I craving all this sugar? Right.
Mm-hmm.
Like, why am I binging and eating like, a pizza or whatever it is? Right. And so we all struggle in these different ways with these coping mechanisms. And so for me, it's been an incredible realization that has also helped me dig into other work on myself. So, at first when I stopped drinking and I was kind of teetering back and forth, when I joined this program, like, yeah, I'll probably drink again at some point, or, like, I'm not an alcoholic. It's, it's not like that big of a deal.
Right.
But I really started to like look at my history
Mm-hmm.
and get honest with myself, like really honest. I didn't have a switch flip until, like Chris says, till I made a decision. In the first few days of joining the program, I made a decision. I'm done drinking.
Yeah.
I'm done. And it wasn't until that moment, it was like once I finally decided that I was done with alcohol, it was like the sense of relief came. And so social situations and everything shifted. It was no longer, oh, am I going to go and have a drink? Will I have a glass of wine? No, I won't. This is what I'll say. This, it was like all this mental gymnastics that we talk about a lot.
Right.
All of that kind of started to shift. And I felt this different, like almost like this lightness that started to come. It was like I made the decision, I shut the door, and it was about moving forward and not looking backward, and doing things that really enrich my life and take care of Heather instead of sabotaging Heather and doing things that don't align with what I really want and how I really want to show up. Yeah. So for me, making that decision, shutting the door, was, huge. I mean, it was a huge part of my process, and it wasn't how I came into this. It's not how I thought things would go. It's just not. And so, at first, I had to say no to social engagements. I had to say no to spending time with certain people. That was hard. That caused some confusion for me and some struggle. But I needed, during those initial weeks, however long it lasted about a month or so for me, where I really needed to go inward, like come inward to myself and eliminate a lot of social noise, whether that was with family or friends or whatever, and just spend time with myself and strengthening my own awareness, listening to my nervous system. It was like a combination of things. And so many of the tools that I dug into were from this program. And simple exercises that you don't think are going to make a big difference, but they do.
Yeah,
They
they
really,
seem like, oh, okay, I'll do this, I guess. And then you do it and you're like, this is profound. Yeah.
yeah. And at first you're like, I don't get the point. I don't think this is a big deal. But, writing a letter and breaking up with alcohol and, listening to the different books. I listened to them, which for me was really helpful, just listening instead of just reading. Everyone, kind of learns differently. But yeah, really digging in, doing exercises, leaning into the process, and then letting it take me in different directions,
Than what
exploring.
you thought it might go.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Just being open to that and creating a new, like a life for myself that lifts me up and elevates the parts of myself that I want to share with the world, right? Instead of sabotaging parts of myself and falling, sort of prey to these negative toxic behaviors. And for me, snowball. So, having a drink snowballs into these other compulsions, right? That do not serve me. And that might be, eating a big pizza, the whole thing, and then feeling like shit the next day about it, or calling an ex and saying things that I don't really feel or mean, going to the casino, draining my savings account. I mean, whatever it is, like I've done all of it and it's not how I want to show up anymore. So for me, it's like closing the door on those old behaviors has allowed me to open up a door to new, positive, healthy behaviors. And if I'm having thoughts about going backward, I play it through in my head. And it's like, no, that's not how I want to show up for myself first. So it's like once things fall in line here, it all spills over onto everything else in your life. And so my relationships have gotten better. I'm more emotional, I'm emotionally stable. I have more passion showing up in my life. I have a lot more time to focus on things that are of interest to me. I don't have to worry about, like we've talked about, driving. I mean, because I'm going to be honest, I would drive drunk. I mean, I would. I would be driving, and I should not have been driving many
Listen,
times.
you know what? This is a judgment zone. This is a judgment-free zone because I was just talking to a client yesterday that was like, I've never had a DUI. And I'm like, but you deserved one. Just beware that if you're listening to this because you're in our group, like you deserve one too. So if you haven't had one, stop drinking and driving. And if you have had one, realize that you just got caught.
Yeah.
And hopefully it changed your relationship with alcohol. Usually there's some court mandated relationship changes and things like that. But it's so interesting because we were all doing things like that. So, admitting that on an interview, it's like we need to take away the stigma for all of that because there's not a single person that's ever, I mean, there might be. Most of us at some point in time have gotten behind the wheel of a car when we shouldn't have.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm so grateful that, that nothing worse came of it. But I'm just at a place now where I'm so grateful to be on the other side of alcohol, looking back at it and not having it in my life anymore. And I'm saying that like just 1,000%. I'm now when I go and hang out with friends or people that are drinking, it's not as difficult for me. I always bring my own drinks now, just
tell the people
something
what you're liking right now. What are you bringing with you right now? What are you liking?
So I mean, there's so many good drinks now on the market. I mean, it's such a huge market. And what else I haven't realized is that there's a lot of people actually that don't drink. There's more and more. And I didn't realize it before because I wasn't paying attention to it. And so now when you actually are paying attention, I've connected with all kinds of people who are like, yeah, I don't drink anymore either. I'm like, so cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's all kinds of drinks. I actually just ordered some stuff. I haven't gotten it yet, but I'll let you know how it is. But there's, my Instagram feed is full of advertising now, right?
Oh yeah.
For the non-alcoholic drinks. So.
Oh, same here. Same here. Mine's more Facebook, but yes, I'm getting all the ads because I ordered Hio, and I think I might have ordered it through Facebook or something. I opened the link, so now I get all the beverages, the non-alcoholic beverages. So they're gonna have a customer. Marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, and so for me, like, I also am not trying to replace alcohol. That's not my, like, I haven't ordered any, like, non-alcoholic wine and, like, poured it out, into it. I mean, I definitely will, like, have a drink of something delicious if I feel like it. But I also don't want to, like, I don't know, for me, there's a part of it too where I just don't want to emulate almost, right? Like that same ritual, um, pouring something that looks like wine into a wine glass, and I don't know. So I don't know, but there's a lot of different drinks that I've enjoyed. Kava has really naturally relaxing benefits. The kava drinks are pretty good. You can pour over ice. There's some drinks that have adaptogens in them that I've ordered that have been delicious. It's like a mocktail, but there's, ashwagandha and shatavari and, different naturally occurring compounds that are delicious that also give you a relaxing benefit. And so I've really enjoyed some of that stuff. Yeah, so, there's just so many options, but I'm so grateful to be on the other side of the loop of alcohol. I am so incredibly grateful. And so this program was that catalyst that I needed. I am so grateful to still have access to the recorded calls. If I can't make them during the week, I try to hop on when I can. But I usually watch back all the recorded discussions, because I always find something in them that is very valuable. Just knowing that other people, are struggling and then kind of pushing through and finding a new path, it helps lift me up as well. And so, yeah, the whole experience has just been so worthwhile. It's completely enriched my life, put me on a new path, and it's the path that I knew I needed and wanted in my life. And I'm just incredibly grateful. So.
Oh my goodness. I love it. Thank you for sharing your story. I didn't even have to ask you any of the questions that we reviewed because you just rolled it out there. So I love it. There's not a person out there that has a little bit of a struggle with alcohol that's not thinking, oh my God, I would be Heather right now. And, Heather is an extraordinary person, but there's nothing different about you than anybody else as far as drinking. I mean, it catches all of us. It knows no race. It doesn't discriminate. It's like, if we just keep consuming it, we end up kind of problematic with it, right? So I think this is going to be a big inspiration to a lot of people because you're super successful, super creative, you're super in touch with yourself, you're into self-development, you got your own business going, and then alcohol just came in and whoop, it just does. So the one thing I wanted to mention is that so many different things in coping that can be different. So, one of the things you said is that you didn't want to go out with friends. In the beginning, you said no because you didn't want to be triggered or feel weird about not drinking, and you had to really get strong on those legs and get those muscles strong. Some people dive right when we I can do this. We went to a casino like this first week of quitting. I think it was a casino. And people don't do this. And there's no instruction for this. It's really being like that. So really having to hold back on that. that's perfect for you. The next client would say, I'd like to go do happens and create a they're like, oh, it's really important, they can rag out. So it's only different, anything other individual. And the like you do, you know, all the things, and we're interested. It's so cool to watch people develop over time. And I'm glad I have you in my life because I'm going to keep you here. And I know you'll stay in the community, but I also will keep with me and tell you my little bag of people that I do because I grow a lot and we align on so many things. And you know, being alcohol free is about
you know, social situations. So
passenger,
the dark passenger. Yes. So you know, that creeps up. It does. It still creeps up, and I think become less and less over time. But it is still. It's always there because alcohol is everywhere, and so many people consume it, and so I'm still very aware of it, and I have to be vigilant. And that is my personal process on how I do that. But I have found that I enjoy social situations more. So,
oh yeah.
And now if, you know, one of my good friends is drinking their wine and they're slurry and, you know, kind of like, you know, looking tired, and I mean, it's fine. That's their decision, you know. That's that person's decision. It, you know, it doesn't need to be my decision and how I show up. And I still totally enjoy connecting with people and spending time. And I typically will leave a little earlier now, you know.
Yeah.
It's not a big deal. It's not as big of a deal at all. I feel good in the morning. I say what I mean what I say, and I can still connect and show up as a wonderful version of myself that I'm proud of. I can walk away and, you know, it's like I haven't like given anything up that I didn't, you know, feel good about. And that feels so good. To just be more stable.
Yes.
Right? Like I'm done being sloppy. I don't want to be sloppy anymore. And I know some people are still there, and that's okay.
Yeah, you know, it's an individual journey. So anybody listening is not going to take offense to you calling them sloppy. They know they're sloppy too, and we all know what being sloppy is like because, you know, if we're drinking, we're going to get sloppy. Like it's not an insult. It's an adjective, right? It's like this is what it is. It's just an objective observation.
Right.
Yeah. So goodness gracious, I want to ask you one question, and we're going to end this because we've just gone on, and that's how you and I do. So that's pretty much it tracks for us. But and that's okay. This has been wonderful, providing inspiration to not only the people in our group who will get to meet you on the Monday night calls when you can make it, but the people who aren't in our like client community and who are, you know, maybe starting to question. In the very beginning, you spoke about the bonfire, and I take notes because otherwise they all go in and out. You know me and my ADHD. We're talking about that bonfire and hosting at your property back when you were married, and I want to just give you a hypothetical because you said it was so fun and you know, just great times, and I know you live in a different place now, but you love your property, you love your land, you love the wilderness and the rain and the forest and all of that. You live in the forest on a mountain or something, right? So in Washington.
Yep.
Yeah. Yep. Because you're rainy like Seattle. Let's pretend that you had a big bonfire out back. Do you have a big bonfire out back?
No, but I have a fire pit.
Okay, you have a fire. Same thing. So you have a big fire pit, and you invite the people that you know now over to your house. You're not drinking. Is it a blast or does it really suck?
It's a blast.
Okay, that's all I wanted to hear because
it's a blast.
Yes.
Because people like we talk about, people make the party. Alcohol does not.
Yes. But we have been
true. You know?
We've been conditioned to, I was just talking to a family member of mine, and we've been so conditioned to like say yes to things because there's alcohol there, because we were drinkers, right? When we were drinkers, it's like, hell yeah, I want to go get a drink. So somebody would invite you to a party and you'd be like, yep, I'm there, and you'd put it in your calendar. Now, that same person, everything just changed that you're a non-drinker, and you actually have the opportunity to say, do I want to go? Because the old me was going anywhere that the alcohol was, because it was just an excuse to drink. It's like I was drinking every day, but also vacations were like an opportunity to drink more. A holiday or a party was an opportunity to drink even more. Like opportunity really shit-based, right?
Yeah.
It's just, I'm like losing my words here, but it's almost like you get to decide now. So some of the things I said yes to before, I wouldn't say yes to now necessarily. Maybe the person hosting is not a great friend of mine. Or maybe I don't want to hang out with a bunch of people who are going to be sloppy by 10 p.m. But I'll go if I like the people. I'll go, but I'll probably leave when things start to get a little sloshy, a little sloopy, a little sloppy, because I start to get bored. And as a non-drinker, I get tired. I'm a human. I'm supposed to go to bed.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I used to pride myself on being the one that could hang the guys. You know, I was like the cool girl. I could hang super late. I would stay up and make sure everyone was all good and taken care of. And, you know, that was my MO. Yeah. But not anymore. Yeah. It's more conscious.
I'm the first one gone.
Yeah. And, you know, there are different situations that will arise. There's plenty of situations I have not yet been in. I have been a little protective and careful about how I have navigated this path for myself. And you know, it's still a journey. It's still a work in progress. There are going to be some situations that come up. I'm not sure how to deal with them, and I might present it on a weekly call and ask, you know, for support or feedback on how others might, you know, navigate it. But you know, that's what I think this community is here for, and you know, to lean in and you know, raise those topics, ask those questions, ask for additional coaching support if it's needed, for retraining our brains a little bit. But yeah, I mean, there's just, once you get away from alcohol, you just realize that in many ways it's just been holding you down. And so when you get away from it, you start to see like, oh wow, I'm actually a really bright, vibrant person. And there's so much to life and socializing with other humans that doesn't need to involve a toxic, you know, beverage. It just doesn't. Yeah. So anyway,
yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming today. I hope everybody got some inspiration from here. I've got to hop because I've got another Zoom call in a few minutes. But would you do me a favor, Heather, hop on my calendar for like a month from now so we can catch up?
Yes.
You've got my calendar link, so it's right in your message. So hop in there and let's get on the phone. Let's get on the horn again in like a month, just so I can catch up with you. I told you, I'm gonna keep you. I'm keeping you in my life, and I love all of my clients, and I love what I do. And I love watching what you do, your work. As far as I'm here as a guide, I'm going to offer tools, support, accountability, but the work is all done by the client. Like I can't make somebody quit drinking, and I'm never going to come knock a drink out of your hand. Why? Because you can pour a new one. What's the point? So you have to not want to pour the drink, right? So there you go. But if anybody's curious, reach out to me, reach out to Chris, reach out to Matt. We're the 3 coaches of freedom from alcohol. And one of us will have a conversation with you and see if this might be a good fit for you. 2, if you are just sick and tired of being sick and tired. Real quick, I'll give a couple plugs. If you're still here, we do have a podcast called Freedom from Alcohol. It's on all the big podcast networks or whatever you call them. And that's me, Chris, and Matt. And so give us a like, give us a share. And stay in the group for more inspiration, tips, tricks around the holidays, and all of that good stuff. So, all right, Heather, thank you so much. I'll talk to you.